Hi, I'm Mo. I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
It's time for another productive conversation, this time with Mo. I'm really excited to have this conversation because I get to talk to somebody who geeks out about productivity as much as I do based on the amount of time we spent in the space. See, Mo is the CEO of Boomerang. There's 2 million savvy active users relying on Boomerang to spend less time on email, and now there's Boomerang scheduling, which we'll get into, but we get into a lot. We get into my love-hate relationship with email. We get into the idea of Inbox Zero, and whether or not Mo believes Inbox Zero is something that you should strive for. This is a fantastic conversation that is a productive one because you got two productivity geeks talking about productivity and email and all the things in between. So let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Mo. Mo, thank you so much for joining me. This is honestly the first time I've had someone on the program that has just a single name. It's like, I mean, I don't want to draw comparisons like Madonna or Cher or anything like that, but it's hard not to a degree. So right out of the gate, I mean, I know we're going to dive into the email conversation and so much, and you know, kind of your rise to where you're at now with Boomerang, formerly known as Baden, right? Like, I think there's still some connectivity there, right?
Yeah, the company name is Beating. We
Yeah.
just go by Boomerang because that's the product name and that's what we are known for.
It's kind of like we're known as, I mean, we're morphing into MikeVardy.com, but we're known as, and before it was Productivityist, but before that, but our official name is Productivityist Productivity Services Inc. Because it has to be,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So
There's
it's
a
like,
legal name.
So explain to me why the single name? Like why?
My
Because
full name is A Mo, and I came from Burma. We do not have a first name, last name system. Everybody has their own unique name, and you kind of pick out which personal name that you go by with friends and family. So that's that's how it works, and it's kind of a strange system because you don't really share any last name with any members of the family.
yeah, that is interesting. It's but so the ties that bind are more, you know, just the relationships that you forge, but it's not related to, like, there's no Vardy family. There's no
Exactly.
that
It
is that
sounds strange, but it works. And I
yeah.
think Burma was originally a matriarchy, so it's kind of probably expresses somehow, you know, through the
Okay.
lack of
Now I
last
want to
name.
dive more. Now I want to dive more into into Burmese history. I want to dive into that because a matriarchy, that to
Hmm.
me is fascinating.
It is.
Yeah, that is interesting. You're now in charge of
Hmm.
Boomerang, right? Like, so your role. Can you explain, you know, not only the role that you have there, but what fascinated you with what Boomerang does that kind of led you to where you're at now?
So I have been a co-founder with Boomerang from the very beginning, but I was head of product. Um, the reason why Boomerang or why productivity in a larger format is I was that kid who always optimized my day and had these note-taking systems. I literally time myself getting ready in the morning and figured out how to optimize to do it faster and better. So from that, when it was time to really think about like what I'm going to do with my life, it's just part of natural extension. I've been hacking on my own personal productivity for all my life. So, of course, that's what I'm going to do.
Let's talk about email because, and we before we jumped on the call, I
Uh-huh.
did tell you that I have some very polarizing isn't the right term, but I have very opinionated thoughts on email, and I would love to get, considering your business, that's what it was built on, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
jokingly talked about the email game.
Yes.
That was which I, you know, back when I was writing for Lifehack and had contributions to Lifehacker, I remember seeing that going, this was really the first form of gamification, I think, when it came to productivity, right? Like, so let's touch on that first, like, because I think that the gamification of email has it's still there, but it's done in a very subtle way. But I would like to touch on, because you obviously, as a co-founder, the email game, you were there. Like you were. So
Yes.
what was the impetus for that? Because I'd like to, and then we can dig into deeper into the Boomerang evolution and so on.
Yeah, so at the time, in a funny way, both email game and Boomerang were kind of built parallel, like at the
Right.
same time. And the reason we did was because their email has a bad rap, right? By the time 2010 came around, everybody hates email, dealing with email. And gamification was all the rage at the same time. But we were also thinking, like, how do we make it more fun?
Hmm.
And how do we make it implemented in a way so that it's a one-touch system, right? We all know the 43 folders and all the people who are like getting things done, right? David
Yep.
Allen, they are like philosophy and teachings are there, but there was nobody who actually built and make it possible for you to actually implement the one-touch system. So
Right.
we wanted to make it so that it's fun. You see the email. So it's only one email at a time. You have to make a decision and you get either penalized or rewarded for making a decision and moving on to the next email. And the timer and the game and points were just mostly to see, would that make it less painful for
The
people?
cue reward thing, right? Like the
Hmm.
cue, the action, and the reward, right? Like
Right.
people love to get. I'm in a cohort right now as we are uh, recording this conversation called Ship 30, and it's a digital writing cohort.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things they give is badges. When you hit a certain
Yes.
accomplishment, you get a badge, and everyone
Hmm.
wants to get all the badges, right? We've even implemented them to a degree inside of my time crafting trust community. People love the reward aspect, which
Yes.
leads to inbox zero. You mentioned 43 folders. You mentioned, which is Merlin Mann's baby.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned David Allen getting things done, who David's been on. I've had many conversations with David over the years. Merlin and I've had a few as well. Um, inbox zero. You know what inbox zero meant when it was first coined. It does not mean that now.
Yes.
How? Uh, this is where I get frustrated
I
because it.
don't believe it inbox zero. My
Oh,
inbox is
okay.
never zero.
Okay. So,
That's not why we
but
build Boomerang.
right, but to your point, inbox zero isn't about getting your email to zero either, at least not in its initial phase. So
No.
I've talked about it. I love to hear, like, so you don't get your email inbox to zero in the current phase, but do you get your email inbox to zero in the way that Merlin Mann coined the phrase?
The active items that you need to deal with. Yes, occasionally. I think for me, now that I have stepped into the CEO role, it has been harder than when I was head of product because I am more externally facing and I generally just get more like, I don't know how to put it, kind of they are not exactly spam, but they are not real email either. It's halfway where I have to kind of make a decision to engage or not. And those things can tend to kind of float around. And like, I don't really want to boomerang it because I don't just want to punt it. And then I still have to make that decision at some point anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I have kind of every week I have about 2 sessions where I'm going to deal with email to about zero in the sense that I have handled everything that needs to be handled and make decisions. Necessarily mean like no emails in my
Right.
inbox. Yeah.
So then that leads to my next question is, do you think that the current meaning, which is not what it really was intended to, I'll keep going back to that, of inbox zero, is a solid productivity measuring stick for people?
No, I think it's kind of a fool's errand. You keep chasing this unsustainable state and you put more effort into maintaining the state than it serves you, right? Because we do all these things so that we can perform our job functions, whatever that may be. And if it's not adding to that and adding more stress and time, trying to maintain this as an unsustainable state
Well, you
is
can't get
kind
the
of
other you can't get your other stuff done.
right.
It's like you're
Exactly.
trying to plug holes, and meanwhile there's like
Yeah.
you're. It's like you were saying earlier, like we were talking about kids, and it's like you trying to like plug holes in a dam, and your young child is like, "Can you feed me, mom?" No, no, I've got to plug these, and then your kid is starving, right? Like you're not paying
Yeah.
attention to things you should be paying attention to.
Exactly. Right. Like, does it make you a better CEO just because your inbox is zero? I don't know. Like, there are some advantages to not leaving your inbox a complete pigsty, right? Like, you don't want it
Sure.
to be so that you can never know what's important, what needs to be done, what's coming up. But no, I don't think the obsession with inbox zero has not served a lot of people.
So let's talk about Boomerang and how it actually can make it so that inbox zero, this unattainable, not sustainable goal. I think Boomerang is a way to kind of, it's a mechanism to allow you to almost get that feeling of zero without actually, quote, achieving it. Does that make sense?
I think some people might boomerang a bunch of things just so that they can have that inbox zero
Yeah.
for an hour or so.
Sure.
But I don't think that's the primary use case or how people use it, at least from, our conversation with our customers.
Okay.
Most of our customers are boomeranging things to the time that they will actually need it, right? So the conversation, the email that we confirmed this podcast was sent to us several months ago, and I
Yep.
have it boomerang the day before, and then I email you and like, hey, Mike, confirming everything is good. That's the type of use case that's generally why our customers are using and paying for Boomerang.
I'm glad you brought that up because we'll go to the getting things done methodology that David Allen's talked about, and having as few in what's his quote? I think is have as few inboxes as possible, but as many as you need, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What Boomerang does is it allows you to not put things in a to-do list app that would over clutter the to-do list app, right? Like you could have very easily forwarded that email to a to-do list app like Todoist or Asana or ClickUp or whatever, but then it's there with everything else.
Yes.
And so you need to make decisions around, hey, I've received this email, whether it's a task or a resource, it doesn't matter. Information. That's the thing. The distinction doesn't matter. It's more about I need to decide when I need to see this again.
Remember at the right time.
Right.
Because it's like offloading your brain and mental capacity more than the actual thing.
Right. So let's get into the idea of snoozing email, which I think, if I remember correctly, at least through my journey, was almost like a response to Boomerang in a lot of ways. I don't think that snoozing existed before Boomerang did.
No, I consider us the original inventor of snooze. We just call it boomeranging. We didn't call it snooze because I felt like snooze had a little bit more of a, procrastination, meaning to it. Or like people think about like the snooze button when you wake up, you snooze. So we were like, okay. And then the concept of like boomerang because, okay, it comes back instead of something that needed to be snoozed over and over. So that was mostly our like nomenclature, and the concept is exactly we invented snooze.
And it's an active decision. Snoozing is often done very, like if you're talking about from the alarm clock perspective, it's done rather haphazardly. It's not done in a deliberate fashion.
Right.
If you're going to chuck a boomerang, you're going to do it in a very deliberate way. Not that I've ever chucked one, but
no.
but it's so how, as somebody who's been involved with Boomerang since the start and in your role now, how do you feel? Because I've seen like you're not the first software as a service in a lot of ways to have these things kind of co-opted into other. That's and not only that, but I mean, there is Boomerang for Outlook. There's Boomerang for Gmail. Like you can integrate it, but how does it feel to? I mean, it's got to be a bit of a not a pain point, but it's got to be either a point of pride or a point of frustration to a degree that it's like, hey, these things have now integrated the very thing that we invented, and we're not getting the notoriety for it. We're we live in the space, so I knew. I mean, I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely want to talk to Mo about Boomerang, but how does that? How do you rise above? How do you make sure that you let people know, hey, we did this? Not that you're concerned about it, but it does. I get it.
I think you hit it like right on the head, right? It's both a point of pride and a point of pain. A point of pride is that even if I, don't do anything anymore in my career, that is a thing that we have done that has made a mark in the world, right?
Right.
It's not just an email now. It's now in Slack, it's on Trello. Many productivity systems now have a way to resurface an item at the right time.
Right.
And that has this incremental gains for billions of people, right? So
Right.
that is a point of pride, even if I don't get credit for it or monetary compensation for it because we didn't think to file a patent, right? And we were a bunch of engineers who just like to build what we like to build, so we want very savvy about how these things work. And a point of kind of pain and frustration in a little bit, but at the same time, like, people know how to do it, people know how to use it. And I'm sure you know this, like, you've been building some systems and tricks and things to make
Yep.
yourself more productive. The more people use it, the better it is for everybody. And you kind of feel
Absolutely.
like, I'm glad people know. I think the frustration was at the early on when we were trying to educate people why you might need it. And that part was an uphill battle. And I'm glad that we found that fight because now everybody can enjoy it.
Well,
And
and this brings my point about my bone of contention with email. It's not email that I have a problem with. It's
no,
the users. It's people
yes,
who
it's
it's like
human. Humans are humans.
yeah, well, it's true. There was no again, back to being a parent. It's not like when you have a kid, they go, "Here's the manual, and here's how you're supposed to do it." You learn from watching others and maybe getting other. But email was. I mean, sure, I'm being a bit reductive, but it's kind of the same. When email was first, created and then en masse given to the public, it wasn't like, here, okay, this is something you should probably text. Oh, wait, we don't have texting yet, so never mind. Like, or this is something you should instant message. Like, I mean, there's nothing, you mentioned some of these emails that come in that aren't spam, but they're not like the things that are meaty, that you're going to, they're more like the, hey, welcome to happy Monday. Welcome to the office. Here's what's going on this week. And you're like, or even just the innocuous, I have to get the last word in on this email thread kind of deal. It's if there was some training around this, and by the way, there's a previous episode that we had, Prashant Nair talks about the stack method, which I think is a fantastic way to process email, whether you want to use a tool alongside it or not. I mean, I use SaneBox in conjunction with, like, there's lots of email tools that can help you with this. But to your point, and you mentioned this, humans are humans. At the end of the day, it's human behavior that can make email problematic. So with Boomerang, if someone was going to sign up for Boomerang today, and we're going to talk about Boomerang scheduling too, because that's a whole other, arena that we're getting into. Someone's starting with Boomerang now. And they're like, I've heard about Boomerang, I want to use it. Some of the key points that they need to do to make their email experience great for them, but also great for the people that they're sending the emails to.
Yes, I think that's the major fundamental difference between us and other email companies, right? Because a lot of the email tools optimize for their user because that's the user who pays them.
Sure.
They never really think about the counterparty, the person on the other end of the ecosystem. And like, if you think about it, email is the less open protocol we have in our digital communication, right? So we don't want it to really be a bad experience because then that's bad for the ecosystem. And when we think about meeting scheduling, that's like my main concern because, all these new meeting scheduling evolution, right? They were like, oh, let's make a link and just send it to the other person. They handle it. Basically, you offload the scheduling work to the recipient. And we sat down and like, is that the right experience we need to be promoting and encouraging?
Right.
And calling it productivity, right? We wanted to think about the person who's getting that meeting invite or, hey, how do we find the time? And think from their point of view. If I was that person, what would I want to receive in the email? And we kind of push the boundary of the technology to make sure that we can send you a live image in your email with specific time that they can just one click accept, right? So, and then We even think about, hey, if you were the recipient and you kind of want to actually overlay your own schedule from the time that they gave me, you can do that. And that part was not easy, like for us to really kind of like think about how do we send a live image that slide to the time that you open it. So let's say, especially Canadian and Europeans who actually take summer vacation, right?
Yes.
I sent an email to somebody in Europe and they are off for August, right? And when they come back in September, first week of September, the time that I gave are actually up to date and they go forward from September forward. So they never have to be like, oh, mate, those times that you gave are out of date. Can you give me new times? That that back and forth dance. We try to eliminate it by thinking through the lens of what does it make a more respectful, equitable, and speedy experience for both sides.
So it's interesting. I've had scheduling links that I've sent to friends before. More often than first off, here's one barrier, and this is something that I think you would address, especially because it's built into a program that kind of, like what you've got going on that people are already adopting into. So they bought into it a bit. But I remember, and Cal Newport addresses this in his book, A World Without Email, the idea of, well, who am I to give you a link? Like, that it almost seems like an arrogance, which is not true. It's
not what you intend to. But
no, but it's a
could be
bias.
Interpreted. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So that's number one. So once you get past that, that's okay. But then you're right, the interpretation. And I remember sending one. I finally got past that pain point, that friction point. But then because I didn't finesse it enough, so here's the human error. Mike, I'd love, hey. So I would send it. I could tell you, I sent it to a friend of mine. Said, "I'd love for you to be on this podcast." And he goes, "Great." And I said, "Okay, here's a schedule. Here's my booking link. Go ahead and pick a time." And he was like, "But you want me to be on your show?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh." So I had this tool that I thought this is really great. It's going to help make it easier. But the nuance of the finessing of the messaging didn't allow, luckily it's a close friend. He was like, "Mike, you might want to think about this going forward." I'm like,
and then,
"You're right."
He was close enough with you to kind of push back, right? If somebody not close enough, they might just be like, "Hey, I'm just going to walk away." Then that would be a guest that you might not have booked. I think there's like a weird hidden power dynamics in all our communication that we need to pay more attention to. And now that like everybody's remote and we don't see each other in person, it's become even more important.
Well, and I think that's why the tools are so helpful. That's where the tools come in. They allow you to go, okay, but fools rush in, right? Like, oh, I've got the shiny new tool. We're recording this right now, literally after Apple, I think, announced their iPhone 14. I'm pretty sure that's what they announced. I haven't paid attention. But people are like, I've got to get the new phone. I've got to get this thing. They get the new phone. The new phone has everything already set up the way that the phone provider wants it, not necessarily the way that you want it. And you just go in and start using it without going, hold on. It'd be like getting a new car and getting a new car and then going, well, the seats are this way, so I'm going to leave it this way. And the radio is programmed this way, so I'm going to, no, I mean, some of it you will need to do later. You may not worry about the radio right away, but you're probably going to worry about the mirrors and the seat and the things that you need to actually, operate it in the optimal way, which in this case would be safe. I think you have to do this with all this stuff, don't you?
You do, I think, but the premise of these scheduling links are just that, I send you the link, which is one click for you.
Yes.
For the other part, you click it, you open the tab, you look at the schedule, you type in your name, your email address. So there's, the
friction.
There's the imbalance of effort required on like parties, which way it hangs. And that's what we're trying to make is like, 2-click for you to send, right? You're in email, you click, it's in there, the image is there. The recipient is also 2-click. They click the time and then they're done. They don't have to type in anything more. So I think for us, it's like we want to push the hard work onto the technology instead of the other party, right?
Okay, so here's an interesting. So how does it feel this time to be maybe reinventing the wheel rather than inventing it?
I think it's a little bit easier. Like, I am so glad we are entering an existing category instead of creating a new category from scratch.
Right.
There is budget in companies to, for meeting scheduling is already out there. So I'm very thankful that they are pioneers who did that for work for us. Now we're just saying, hey, here is a better tool, right? Here is a better way to book meetings. Here is a way to show respect to the guests. Here is a way to, like, for salespeople, like, they care about number of meetings that they can book. So, hey, you can get 120% more meeting. Like, we have a baseline to compare it against you instead of going from, I don't know what this thing is, which is what we had with Boomerang. It's like, I don't know what this thing is. Why should I pay for you? Now we're like, oh, you have this thing. We make it better for you. And, it's either comparable or cheaper than what you're paying. So it's, in a business standpoint, marketing standpoint, we don't have to climb the uphill battle. And from the user experience and stuff, it's a lot easier to design because people already have the mental model of what it means, right? So I think I love it because, like, it's so much easier.
How would Mo growing up, being the organized, super optimizing, productive kind of person, look up to Mo today? How would she feel about all the stuff that you've helped build today?
I think she would be pretty proud, mainly because, being the productivity nerd, like, oh, these are the tools you make available for everybody. And actually, I was a lot more, I don't know, like, I think I waste more time now than when I was a teenager. She would be like, you're pretty efficient, but
Yeah, but
It's
you know
like,
what
yeah.
David Allen said? He built getting things done because he's lazy, right? So I mean, it's it's almost like, and I think it's interesting because when we first get into this game, because you've been in it as long as I have, for sure,
Mhm.
15 years, or
Yeah.
and that
Hmm.
we do it because we want to be more productive. Like that's what, and then over time, it's like we want to create frameworks that allow us to have that spontaneity within the framing that we've got. So productivity was maybe the driving, or the way productivity was. I think productivity
Hmm.
has had a bit of a reframe, or needs a reframe. But now we're at this point where it's like we have these systems and frameworks and tools in place so that we can go for a walk in the middle of the day and not feel bad about it. So that we can spend time with our, like,
Yeah.
the
I
ends
think
have the
having
meat.
kids definitely mellow me out too, and
Sure.
understanding this work is not everything, and whatever you need to do for your life that's important to you, do you have time for that?
Hmm.
How do you
Hmm.
build and design the systems and your day and week so that it's most fulfilling for you, which is very personal and which is also changing all the time, right? What's most fulfilling for me today is very different from what's most fulfilling for me 10 years ago.
And
And
it'll
I
be
think it will
different when,
continually
yeah,
changing.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Mo, this has been a great conversation, and I know you and I could talk much longer because we could geek out about productivity for hours. But I want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' time. Where can people learn more about Boomerang, and especially this new component, Boomerang scheduling?
We're at boomerangapp.com. So when you go there, you'll find all this whole suite of different products we make for different platforms. And personally, I'm on Twitter at AYEMOAH, AYEMOAH.
Thanks for having a productive conversation with me today. Let's do it again real soon.
Thank you, Mike.
Big thanks to Mo for joining me on the program today. We could have kept going. In fact, we did. We kept going for about 15 to 20 minutes after the fact, but you'll get all the information, links, everything in the show notes, which you can find at productivityist.com/podcast 445. And if you want to hear all of our previous episodes quickly, easily, we've had amazing guests. David Allen, who I mentioned, we've had Cal Newport, who was also mentioned during the conversation. Subscribing to the podcast makes it easy to catch up on episodes you've missed, as well as make sure you don't miss a future episode of what's to come. And we've got an episode from The Vault coming next week. A person who I had a chance to hang out with once again when I was in Portland in this summer of 2022, Josh Kaufman. I'm really excited to have him back on the program as we revisit that episode. You don't want to miss that one, and anything that's coming down the pipeline. As of right now, we have episodes mapped out until early 2023. subscribe to the show. That way you don't miss one. Before I go, big thanks to our sponsors, those you heard on this episode. You can find all of the details around them, any of the offers and such at productivityist.com/podcast sponsors. Do that now. And now it's time for me to bid you farewell for another week. Until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.